It can seem impossible to imagine a way out of a crisis when you're in the middle of it. It's hard to have vision through tunnel vision. This summer, my husband and I drove to southern Utah to visit some of the national and state parks there. I was particularly excited about seeing Zion and Bryce, and we found a little cabin Airbnb that was situated right in between all the places that we wanted to visit, so we'd go and hike during the day and come back to rest at night and visit a new place the next day. We were closest to Zion National Park, only about 25, 30 minutes from the entrance of the park, and looking through the guidebooks, I knew that there was a tunnel that you had to drive through in order to get to Zion. Even though my claustrophobia prevented me from exploring a cave only 5 years earlier with my family, I'd driven through tunnels before, so I thought I'd be okay. However, after we'd entered the dark and narrow tube cut into a mountain a mile long, I'm driving, by the way, I began to panic. In this stretch of road into the earth, there are no lights, no real windows, and no air, it seemed. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. This claustrophobia stems from a time when I was 9 or so, when I locked myself into the tiny linen closet in the bathroom. I didn't know it didn't open from the inside, and no one could hear my screaming because my brother had left the stereo on too loud, and I knew I was going to die in that closet, and I thought I was going to die in this tunnel. But we made it through. We had a wonderful day in Zion, hiking up mountain paths and under green mossy overhangs and through a rushing canyon river. It was magnificent. And when it came time to leave, my husband David said, "I'll drive," and then that way I could just put my head down and pretend like I wasn't driving into a dark tomb of death. But then suddenly my head popped up right before we were about to enter it, and I said, I can't. So my husband stopped the car and turned around, and we drove 2.5 hours out the west entrance, up north, back east, and down south to our cabin that was 25 to 30 minutes away. I love my husband. But here's the thing. Hours after we had left the park, a storm suddenly blew in. We heard about this later. Huge boulders tumbled onto that mountain road, blocking people in their cars in that tunnel for hours. Yes, I want to throw up just thinking about it. Yeah, it's bad. But I wasn't in there. I know it's somewhat irrational to be afraid of tunnels, but fear gives us tunnel vision. It makes it so that we can't see a way through. The walls pressing in, we can't imagine the possibilities, but love finds a way out of no way. The distance between impossible and merely improbable can be small, minuscule really, but everything that exists happens in that gap. That narrow space between impossible and merely improbable is the difference between all of life and nothing at all. Our very existence on this planet is astonishingly improbable, yet not impossible, clearly, because we're here. As science has explored the origins of the universe and the number of planets in it, some have concluded that there must be other intelligent life somewhere. How improbable can we be if there are 700 quintillion planets in the universe, as astrophysicist Eric Zackerson estimates? He found, however, with the aid of a computer model that simulated the universe's evolution following the Big Bang, that even with the staggering number of possibilities, we may still be the only planet which could support life anything like ours. Geologist Walter Alvarez makes a similar point in his book, A Most Improbable Journey, A Big History of Our Planet and Ourselves. He states in an interview about that book that it seems very unlikely that the world we live in would ever have come into being considering all the other possibilities. And if you think about how improbable we are, it makes you wonder whether we are destined to be here. If considering the improbability of humanity is a little too meta for you, consider this. When was the last time something felt impossible to you? When was the last time you felt, even for a moment or a day, that there was no way out of your pain, your dysfunction, your crisis? In those moments, the movement from impossible to merely improbable can simply be a matter of not giving up. Sometimes it's about continuing to breathe, to show up until the way out reveals itself. What is and feels impossible or possible to each of us is different based on our life experiences and identities. For some of us, just getting out of bed each day is a major triumph and a miracle. We can't judge the internal struggles of each person. We can only know what our own impossible struggles are and how to shift them into the realm of merely improbable and therefore worthy of continuing to try. Whether it is the global climate crisis, racism, or a lack of affordable housing, the sheer volume of seemingly impossible situations that confront us every day is enough to keep us stuck in a mindset of giving up. And then a small shift happens. A family living in the hospital with their baby on a prosthetic heart, borrowing time until a life-saving heart transplant comes through, is featured in a newspaper article, and donations arrive in time to enable them to pay their bills while they stay with their baby. A healing conversation after years of regret between loved ones brings peace before the end of life. A man with a high school science education discovers a life-saving treatment for his son after he's given only 2 years to live. A colonized country is led to revolutionary freedom by the singular voice of nonviolence. A mother, powered by chemicals produced in her own body, has the strength to lift a car off of her child. Walls that take years and senseless battles to build tumble in minutes. Each of these real-life experiences is something that seemed impossible to those living in it. But someone, somewhere, believed that it might merely be improbable, and therefore worth the effort. These are the dramatic examples, the stories movies are made of, but there are plenty of everyday examples of folks living in faith that what seems impossible might still be worth a try. I'm generally an optimist, but I'm also practical and a realist. It's easy for me to dismiss the improbable and give up hope. What keeps me in it, in the messy, uncertain, improbable practice of faith, is the evidence of human possibility in relationship, in co-creation. It astounds me what we're capable of. Feats of strength and endurance, mind-blowing technological advancements, personal transformation, our ability to create beauty and meaning, and our capacity for kindness. I'm urged by the evidence of the power of love to embrace what might be possible and to keep treading water until the way out emerges. I'm reminded that change in the human heart can lead to change in the human brain, which can manifest over time and change in human society. I believe that each small individual action multiplied by our interconnection has a chain reaction that leads to a new way. When you're up close watching transformation, it can be hard to appreciate the shift from impossible to improbable. Take the emergency overnight shelter, which we just hosted. 3 years ago, there seemed to be no way of providing consistent shelter for those without a home here in Evanston. Shutting the reality out of our minds can be easier than considering what it is asked of us. But a few folks in the Interfaith Action of Evanston community, including members like Tony Ray in our congregation insisted that we need to find a way, at least for the winter months, to keep people from sleeping outside. Teams of folks have been fundraising and talking with the mayor and city council and planning and coordinating. After lots of conversations, meetings, plans, and fundraisers, the intention this year was to be open only when it was 20 degrees or colder, which was up from 15 degrees last year and 10 the year before. But thanks to the generosity of First United Methodist Church, which provided the funds for staff and supplies, the shelter has been open every night since Christmas and will remain open through the beginning of March. Next year, it will be open, Next year, it'll be open every night, all winter long. And I want to thank all of you who participated, who came and set up and made coffee and cleaned up in the morning or stayed overnight. And I want to thank especially our Liz and Stephen Eason, who care so lovingly for our building. They came every morning and made sure that the place was clean and fresh and ready for the next day. And I'm so grateful to them. Yeah. If you see them throughout the week, please give them your thanks. It's far from a perfect solution. We only have capacity for 35 people in this overnight shelter and still sometimes have to turn people away, which is heartbreaking. We can't accept children in this overnight shelter, which is incredibly heartbreaking. Homelessness and the lack of affordable housing is an impossible situation. The way beyond impossible is to keep inching our way through that gap by stretching the limits of possibility, by chipping away at the almost impossible until it's less impossible. None of these seemingly intractable problems will be solved magically or overnight, but we are called by the Spirit of life to the practice of trying. In a New York Times article from this past October titled, "Stopping Climate Change is Hopeless, Let's Do It." I like that title. Climate activists and scientists Auden Schendler and Andrew P. Jones talk about cultivating the practice of facing what seems impossible. They write, "Solving the climate crisis is going to be harder and more improbable than winning World War II, achieving civil rights, defeating bacterial infection, and sending a man to the moon altogether." So how do we engage in a possibly, but not probably, winnable struggle within a rigged system against great odds, the ultimate results of which we'll never see? There's good news. We're perfect for the job. If the human species specializes in one thing, it's taking on the impossible. Schendler and Jones go on to explain that through the practice of facing each day, doing what we can, even seemingly small deeds with little impact, like having a respectful conversation with someone who negates climate change, or composting your food scraps, or calling your legislator, these kinds of continual practices over time can change public opinion, societies, and huge intractable issues. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. There's meaning and practice in the journey, the cultivation of our faith in the beauty and value of life, regardless of where things end up. Friends, I know that many of you are weary. I see how hard you are working to make the world a better place. I feel the same struggle to keep working to resist injustice, to remain optimistic in the face of tyranny, ignorance, and blatant disregard for the value of human life. The challenges we face can make us feel so hopeless. And I want to tell you that your ability to play your part in transforming the world is only possible if you are caring for yourself. That may mean you have to let someone else take the lead for a while. It most definitely means we need to hold on to one another, to stay connected, and to rest when we need to. We have to keep trying, and we have to keep sustaining ourselves for the long journey. Everything is urgent, and we can't fix it all at once, but we must keep trying each day to move into that gap between impossible and merely improbable, and filling that gap with love and hope. We must imagine what is possible even if we don't believe it. We must act as if a better world is possible. That is what faith is. It is action beyond belief. So imagine with me, what is the insurmountable that you're going to keep chipping away at, internally or externally? What is the impossible barrier that you will keep trying to overcome? Where will you set aside your disbelief and act with the faith that a sliver of light can find its way into a narrow gap of despair and illuminate an improbable way? You don't have to banish the darkness all at once or by yourself. And imagining without showing up and taking action isn't enough. But please remember, we find our way out of impossible through love, and you are not alone. May we continue to face together the seemingly impossible challenges with courage, love, and community, and may we together transform them into miracles. May it be so.